Now, as for the thing, I totally agree with you. In fact, you repeat in a way what I said. Maybe I'm not a very tall person, so I always see the full half of the class. And secondly, as an activist, I cannot allow myself the kind of pessimism that some people can allow. I don't allow myself pessimism. What I meant is that indeed 1948, the Israelis attempt to repeat 1948. With this I agree. I just have a feeling we have a different Palestinian presence on the ground than we had in 1948. And we hopefully, it's my great hope, that we have a different world public opinion than we had 3 years after the Holocaust. This does not mean that we will succeed by just sitting here and saying it. But a right way of activism, hopefully, can prevent the second Nakba from occurring. It doesn't mean that there's no danger for second Nakba. But I think we should not work on the assumption that it's already taken place and we have lost it. We should work on the assumption that those of us who sit here, those of us who sit in Israel, in Palestine, in England, have the power to stop it if they will do the right thing. That's my optimism.
Good.
Hello, my question is, what do you think about the potential for and the possible merits of a Palestinian non-violent resistance movement in the spirit of Gandhi or Martin Luther King?
You know, the Palestinians have tried twice a non-violent approach. The most famous one is the one led by Mubarak Awad in the early 1990s, and he was immediately arrested by the Israelis, and the military fired into the non-violent demonstrations. In many ways, the 1987 Intifada began as a non-violent demonstrations that were crashed by force. I think, unfortunately, in many, many cases, if you want to talk about that section of the struggle, of resisting the occupation, it would be very difficult to have a purely non-violent movement on the ground. The occupation is so violent that to totally accept it, which is non-violent, is inhuman. It's totally inhuman. There is, of course, a limit, I think, to the violence that should be used against the occupation, but if you talk in absolute term of non-violent, I think the reality of the occupation is to turn any non-violence as a pure, absolute term into an impossibility. However, I think, and that's why I'm such a great supporter of the idea of boycott and sanctions and divestment, I think these are non-violent means that can really, A, succeed, B, have been attempted in the past, in the case of apartheid South Africa with great success. And therefore, I think anyone who doesn't want to see the Palestinians employ violence against the occupation dispossession should fully support the idea of the boycott and divestment and sanction as the only non-violent way of forcing the Israelis to stop what they are doing now, because nothing else would stop it.
I'll say I'm Israeli, and I serve in the Israeli army, and I call myself a Zionist. And I want to share with you and this crowd, maybe, I don't know, maybe we've gone through a different place, a different education, because the education I got never told me that Israel would be better without Palestinians or without the Arabs. I had Arabs learning with me in my class and are still my good friends. And I think saying something like that the education system teaches you that Israel would be a better place if there would be no Arabs is close to a lie. But I would like to ask you something else. You said that that Palestine never existed on maps until British people had to make it Palestine. That means that the Palestinians are actually people, the thing that unites them, the thing that made them people is the fact that the British Empire, which is conquered that area, which won it from the Ottoman Empire, they made Palestinians. There was no Palestinians before. They weren't a group of people. The thing that made them a group is the fact that they drew borders around them. I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah. Okay. The first question, I'm very glad that you went through this very enlightened education system, which I was entitled to. I envy you in many ways. You even had Arab children in your. We don't have the people now.
I just said thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that you had Arab pupils in your class. Israel has basically a segregated educational system, as you know. So you were very, very lucky.
We give freedom to the Palestinians to have their own.
No, there was not freedom. That was forced upon the Palestinians. The history of the education system in Israel is such that the Israeli government decided that the Palestinians would have a segregated education system so that they can control what the Palestinians are learning at school. Secondly, if it was such an enlightened educational system, I still don't understand why 75% of the Israelis are supporting the idea of a transfer for the Arabs from Israel. So either they are negating what the message they got in school, and they're very independently thinking people, or maybe my picture is not a lie, but a correct analysis and description of a very racist educational system. And the media, and the government, and the military, and so on. I think the message of dehumanizing the Palestinians and the Arabs is an integral and organic part of the Israeli existence, unfortunately. Now, for your second point, I think it is, the history of Arab nationalism is such that it began as what the Arabs called Qawmiya, pan-Arab nationalism. The main motive or motivation of people who lived in Palestine, in Syria, or in Iraq of today was indeed to form one Arab republic. It still is in many ways. It makes a lot of sense to me as well. I mean, the idea that the Arab world should have a United States of the Arab world rather than separated countries. Now, the division first by the Turks and then by the Ottomans and then by the powers was meant not to allow the Arabs to have a united national movement. So people began to develop what is called Wataniya, the local Arab national movement, or local national solidarity and identity, which developed in Palestine before the British came because of the way the Ottomans divided the Arab world. However, whatever is the Palestinian national identity, whether they want to be part of a larger Arab national movement, whether they want to be a national movement in their own homeland, one thing is very clear. They don't want to be part of the Jewish state. And they did not dance in the streets when the Jews came and said, this is our house, this is our home after 2,000 years. So there is a very viable Palestinian national movement. But far more important, I agree with you, far more important than nationalism is the fact that the Palestinians are the native indigenous population of Palestine. They were ethnically aligned. It doesn't really matter. Even if they were just religious people, the fact that someone comes into your house, knocks on the door and says, I've been here 2,000 years ago. He says, great news. Why don't you buy the house next door? They say, no. Actually, I didn't live here. This is a typical Israeli tactic. That's a typical Israeli tactic. But we're not in Israel.
Could I make a question, please?
We're not in Israel. Right.
Professor Pappe. Professor Pappe, thank you for your wonderful work. This is a terrible, difficult subject, the history. And on one occasion, I believe it was Napoleon who said, history is a series of lies that we all agree. Certainly, you are the other side because you are bringing some revelation to the history of lies that we have been hearing. My ancestors were Sephardi Jews expelled from Spain by the Inquisition.